Picture this, a king, long lost to history, whose remains are discovered beneath a city parking lot. A man painted as one of history's most notorious villains, a hunchbacked tyrant who murdered his own nephews to seize the throne. This is the story of Richard III, England's last Plantagenet king. But was he truly the monster Shakespeare made him out to be? Or was he a victim of one of the most successful smear campaigns in history? Today, we're digging deep into the archives, separating fact from fiction, to uncover the true story of the controversial king found under the car park. So, who was Richard before he was King Richard III? Born in 1452, he was the youngest son of Richard, Duke of York. His childhood was turbulent, set against the backdrop of the Wars of the Roses, a brutal civil war between his own family, the House of York, and their rivals, the House of Lancaster. Imagine growing up with your family fighting for the ultimate prize, the English crown. Richard was loyal, brave, and a skilled military commander from a young age. He stood steadfastly by his older brother, Edward IV. When Edward seized the throne, Richard became one of his most trusted allies, earning the title Duke of Gloucester. He was known for his administrative skills, his piety, and his loyalty to his brother. There were no whispers of tyranny, no hints of the monster he would later be portrayed as. He was a powerful nobleman, a loyal brother, and by all contemporary accounts, a capable and respected leader in the north of England, where he held considerable power. But then, everything changed. In April 1483, King Edward IV died suddenly, leaving behind two young sons, the 12-year-old heir, Edward V, and his younger brother, Richard, Duke of York. The new king was just a boy, and the kingdom was vulnerable. King Edward IV had named his brother, our Richard, Duke of Gloucester, as Lord Protector, tasking him with safeguarding the realm and his young nephew until the boy king came of age. Richard of Gloucester rode to London, seemingly to fulfill his duty. He intercepted the young Edward V on his way to the capital and escorted him to the Tower of London. Now, the Tower wasn't just a prison back then. It was also a royal residence, a fortress, and a safe place for a king awaiting his coronation. Soon after, the young king's brother joined him in the Tower. On the surface, it all seemed perfectly normal. Richard was the protector, and the princes were safe. But then, the coronation date was postponed, and postponed again. Something was shifting behind the scenes. The bombshell dropped in June 1483. A sermon was preached in London, claiming that King Edward IV's marriage to the prince's mother, Elizabeth Woodville, had been invalid. Why? Because Edward had allegedly been pre-contracted to marry another woman before he secretly wed Elizabeth. In the eyes of 15th century law, this was a serious problem. If the marriage was invalid, then all of their children, including the two young princes in the Tower, were illegitimate. And if they were illegitimate, they could not inherit the throne. The next in line, according to this argument, was the only legitimate heir left from the House of York, Richard, Duke of Gloucester himself. It was a shocking turn of events. Parliament accepted the claim, and just like that, the Lord Protector became the king. On July 6, 1483, Richard was crowned King Richard III. And what of the two boys in the Tower? After the summer of 1483, Edward and Richard, the princes in the Tower, were never seen again. They vanished from public view, and their fate remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in English history. Did their uncle Richard III have them murdered to secure his throne? This is the accusation that has defined his reign for over 500 years. His enemies certainly believed so. The story spread like wildfire. The wicked uncle, consumed by ambition, had his innocent nephews smothered in their sleep. This narrative was perfect for his opponents, particularly the man who would eventually defeat him, Henry Tudor. It painted Richard as an unnatural, child-killing tyrant, making Henry's own bid for the throne seem like a righteous crusade to save England from a monster. But here's the thing, there is no concrete proof. No bodies were definitively identified at the time, no witnesses came forward with a first-hand account. All we have is circumstantial evidence and a lot of politically motivated gossip. Richard III's reign was short, lasting just over 2 years. Despite the dark cloud of the prince's disappearance, his time as king was not without merit. He introduced significant legal reforms, including the concept of bail and laws that made justice more accessible to common people. He outlawed the practice of forcing landowners to give up their property under duress and established the Council of the North to better govern that region. He was, by many accounts, a just and effective ruler, but he was surrounded by enemies. The supporters of the late King Edward IV and his wife Elizabeth Woodville never accepted him. And across the Channel in France, an exiled claimant was watching and waiting. Henry Tudor, a distant relative of the Lancastrian line. Henry saw his opportunity. With a growing number of disgruntled English nobles flocking to his side, he began to build an army to invade England and challenge Richard for the crown. The final act of Richard's story played out on a field in Leicestershire on August 22, 1485. It was the Battle of Bosworth Field. Richard's army was larger than Henry Tudor's, but loyalty was thin on the ground. Several of Richard's key allies betrayed him, either switching sides during the battle or simply refusing to fight. Faced with disaster, Richard didn't flee. In a moment of incredible bravery, or perhaps desperation, he spotted Henry Tudor's banner across the field. He decided to charge directly at his rival, hoping to end the battle with one decisive blow. He and his household knights cut a path deep into Henry's retinue, and Richard is said to have personally struck down Henry's standard-bearer. He came within a sword's length of Henry himself, but it was not to be. Betrayed by one of his key lords, Sir William Stanley, whose forces suddenly attacked Richard's flank, the king was overwhelmed. Unhorsed and surrounded, Richard III fought on, shouting treason, treason, until he was cut down. He was the last English king to die in battle. After the battle, Richard's body was stripped, slung over a horse, and taken to the nearby town of Leicester, where it was put on public display to prove he was truly dead. The new king, Henry VII, had won. The Tudor dynasty had begun. Richard was buried in a simple grave in a friary in Leicester, and with his death began the real character assassination. The Tudors had to legitimize their rule, and the best way to do that was to demonize the king they had overthrown. Chroniclers, writing under the patronage of the new regime, began to craft the image of Richard as a monster. They gave him a withered arm and a hunched back, physical deformities meant to reflect his supposedly twisted soul. This propaganda culminated in William Shakespeare's brilliant, but historically dubious play, Richard III. Shakespeare, writing under a Tudor monarch, Queen Elizabeth I, cemented the image of Richard as the ultimate villain, cunning, cruel, and monstrously ambitious. For centuries, that's where the story ended. Richard was the villain, buried in an unmarked grave, lost to time. But then, in 2012, an incredible thing happened. Archaeologists and historians, following old maps and a hunch, began digging in a city council parking lot in Leicester, the very site where the old friary once stood, and they found him. They uncovered a skeleton with a severely curved spine scoliosis, not a hunchback and battle wounds consistent with historical accounts of Richard's death. DNA tests confirmed it. After more than 500 years, the lost king had been found. This discovery reignited the debate about his life and legacy. It allowed scientists to reconstruct his appearance, revealing a face far from the monstrous caricature. It reminded the world that history is often written by the victors. So, was Richard III a murderous tyrant, or a loyal brother and capable king maligned by his enemies? The evidence is complex, and the truth is likely somewhere in the middle. But his story is a powerful reminder to always question the official narrative, and to look for the human being behind the legend. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through history. What do you think? Was Richard a villain or a victim of propaganda? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the past. See you next time.